Yeah, it's pretty amazing that there's three people with three completely jam-packed agendas, and we somehow do find a way. I think we have to thank Marina for that as well, to find
Yeah,
this little
well planned.
hole in our calendars where, hey, this 2 hour time slot should fit. And I was actually looking forward to it, to welcoming you back on this chat, because I think we left a few topics open in
Yeah,
the other conversation, and one of those was explicitly DCB, right? I think we mentioned it probably once or twice, like, oh yeah, that's a completely different topic. We should discuss that one day. And unlike many one days, this one actually arrived, and here
yeah,
we are. The
yeah.
one days here.
Nice.
So
I'm pleasantly surprised that it actually did happen. So that's good. Lots of
Yeah,
times, yeah. But I
and
think
and
there's
it took
a
long
big
enough
appetite.
for a lot of other things to happen as well, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's lots of stuff to discuss, and maybe before we go into the deep trenches of DCB, and
Hmm.
it's only a three-letter acronym, so it's not that difficult, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe a quick recap, like what's hot at your place, Adam and Martin.
Well, go ahead, Martin. I'll
Oh,
go
so I
after
should
you.
start. Oh, I'm uh, I'm deep into AI right now. Deep into AI. A lot of code generation. A lot of maybe you've heard about the Ralph loop. I'm doing Ralph looping all day. Ralph loop basically means you're running your coding agent in a loop. The coding agent is learning as it goes and improves again and again. And actually, on the second notebook right here, I'm currently building slices right now in the background. It's pretty nice. Pretty nice way of working. I really enjoy that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And when do you expect the moment to be where you just wake up to just see if it's running and then go to bed
Oh,
again?
this happened already. This
Oh, that
happened already.
you're past that stage already.
Yeah, this happened already. Typically I'm standing up, getting up, and then the first thing I do is okay, let's check how many slices did we do today, and then you get to oh, we finished 10 slices. That's nice.
I still have trust issues, so I still force it to ask me to press enter every now and then
Oh
when
yeah,
it does
yeah.
something. But
You cannot do that if
make
you
it.
run in a loop. You cannot do that.
No, no, true. All right, Adam, did you figure out what's?
Yeah. I have a similar problem with quote unquote, not a problem, but AI is everywhere. So that's one of those things that just keeps showing up. And yeah, I've been putting Ralph loops into other pieces. So it seems like Martin, actually, we're on my screen, we're arranged properly. I have the event model above. Martin has all the implementation automated below. So I'm working on the AI part, largely as we discussed in the conference. And because of all this Ralph loop and all these other innovations that happen in AI, I'm looking to change the way the actual event model is done. There's definitely, if you're not AI first, you're going to be left behind. So I have to reset the event modeling.ai project to look at things from the AI perspective first. So if you can imagine the Ralph loop, but for actually creating the event model and passing it off to Martin's side, code generation, that's the part behind me that you see is getting generated top down, from getting all the workflows identified to generating the steps inside each workflow to defining each step to be a proper slice, and then determining all the given when thens below the slice. Of course, this can be, hey, totally hallucinate. Give me an online store, and let it invent what you're going to sell. To being guided all the way through, like you said, Allard, pressing the enter key along the way and refining at each step. But I think this top-down approach is the first thing to tackle. Then there's obviously the reverse engineering of existing systems and legacy, and then there's the maintenance and adjusting a already existing event model to add more things, and then obviously have all of those things that we enjoy in event modeling and the current tooling in Miro, such as completeness check, etc. So that's what's new in my
Cool.
in my life. It's going to be, and continues to already be, an exciting 2026.
Great, good to hear that. Well, yeah, I'm not involved with AI at all. I wish that was true. I'm afraid, and it's funny because I see in the chat some questions coming up about skills, and that's actually what I've been working on as well. As I'm trying to, well, I'm not trying. I'm doing it, but trying to get better at it as
Yeah.
we go. Defining skills for, in my case, Cloud Code, to improve its skills, basically doing the thing right, and that's a fun journey. So right now I'm letting Cloud Code read up a lot of historic things. So I basically said, go through all the issues on GitHub and look at all the PRs and all the comments and just summarize what the issues are and build me some guidelines for
Yeah.
code reviews. Oh, those are great guidelines. Now put that into a skill and say this is what you want, and I want a summary at the end, etc. So now I'm doing code reviews with just telling, hey, that PR, check it.
Yeah, it's
And I get a nice
interesting.
summary.
It's interesting where you put the skills at what seam in your process. You know, Martin, you have the loop going over the entire thing, highlighting and isolating for itself each slice as you go.
Yeah.
I'm defining skills on a much more granular level for specific task, like I said, for the event model, such as one that focuses on the workflow, one that focuses on the step, one that focuses on the given when thens, and so it's quite exciting to see this get built out.
It's
and
almost like programming, right?
Almost,
Building small
yeah.
components that are
Who would've
composable.
thought?
and-
Yeah, exactly. Nothing really
almost-
changed. Before we managed to do the code, now we're tweaking and tuning the skills. It's the same thing.
We just added a few extra turtles, and now we stand on top of
Yeah,
a few more
exactly.
turtles up. Yeah.
I mean,
But,
I like
Allard,
this.
do you do this manually, your skills, or how do you work on those skills?
No,
I
I
do-
let Cloud Code figure the skills
Yeah.
out.
Of course, yeah, of course, yeah.
No,
I mean, we had this discussion last time, Martin, in our podcast,
Yeah.
which is an interesting point because I do like to review them. I know that you have a total hands-off approach to it. You just check the endpoints, but I'm not as trusting, and maybe more like Allard a bit to look. But more importantly, I want to make sure that those skills actually convey, or to see if it's conveying the language that I'm using when we talk about event modeling, whether that's actually getting baked in. And I've been pleasantly surprised just how, when I ask Gemini or any of these other modern things, modern AI tooling that we have, just how well it can reference all the material in event modeling and event sourcing, and actually it's quite good. Especially, I think, Martin, we discussed once having the Gemini assisted learning. I forget what it's called, guided learning, something like that. There's a module, and it was really good at teaching me about event modeling, so I was quite impressed.
I'm also generally impressed with the amount of general knowledge there is already about, for example, in my case, Axon, but also event modeling. When we did the first proof of concept a couple of months ago, almost a year ago, I guess, it wasn't that good yet. You had to really explain how slice worked, and this is what I want. And I have a feeling that right now you don't have to say that anymore. It's
Yeah.
prompt engineering is like a thing of the past. Well, yeah, you have to give it some context, but you don't really have to train the whole thing in your conversation anymore.
I think
Most
Martin has
probably
the
they
best
use
example, right?
Most probably they use our podcasts for.
Maybe, yeah.
Transcribing everything.
Well, that poor AI having to go through all that.
Yeah, all those cat videos and
Yeah.
So I'm actually curious what it could say about DCB. I should have tried up front. Like, hey, tell me something about DCB.
I don't think people have been talking as much about it because of the mountain of news coming out of all of these AI things. So I think people that have started to do event sourcing for the first time, I think they're just assuming that DCB is the standard, because I think the non-DCB, which is, I'm just not going to explain what it is, I'm just going to keep using the acronym. They realize that that they have that they don't need any extra concepts to kind of put into their heads. So they don't need to crack open the domain-driven design book. They don't have to do all of these other things. And I think what's good about event sourcing and event modeling is that it naturally leads to the boundaries and the goals that you would want to meet when doing domain-driven design. But obviously, as we get into this DCB subject, it also allows them to take advantage of some of the context that's right-sized for the command handlers they want to do, or whatever they're looking at doing. So I'm quite happy, because I'm a no tech stack. What's the movement called? Zero library movement. I'm quite behind that. I think that a lot of the things that we want, we can get for free, because AI creates it for us. I mean, it would take a long time to make a Paxos demo before, I remember James Nugent making a nice JavaScript library and a bunch of code to show nodes exchanging information in a scaled system on the right side, and using Paxos to pass voting back and forth. Today that's a prompt, and you can have that demo done in 2 minutes by AI, because of the extensive info out there about Paxos since 1992 or whenever Leslie Lamport wrote those initial papers and studies. I don't think he ever made an official.
But isn't Paxos referred to as the thing that what was it? The thing that only 2 humans on the planet understand, and one of them passed away.
Yeah,
something like that.
It was Leslie. Just for those that don't know, Leslie Lamport is a Microsoft research employee from long ago. But I think he started to get a lot of traction when he wanted to actually prove that distributed systems have to be fault tolerant, and so Paxos is kind of the groundwork for things like the Raft consensus algorithms and things like this.
I think Raft was born out of the frustration that Paxos is so difficult to understand. Let's build something that humans can understand.
Yeah, but it isn't. I always like to have the pen and paper analogy for everything, and Paxos is nothing more than people going around with notes in their hand from office to office. So I always see that as an analogy to be able to understand some of these concepts. But one of the reasons we're here is that the great scalability problem always ended up being on the right side. People competing for a popular concert on Saturday morning, everyone wanting to buy the same front row seat at 10 a.m. exactly. And there's lots of different parallels to that.
All accessing the same concert aggregate on the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or
we all did it. We all did it.
And of course, in the financial world, the trading systems that needed the concurrency is extremely important, and scaling that out, being able to have multiple servers take large streams of data, not just to represent current data, but to be able to logically accept changes to the system and not have conflicts between 2 competing users. So it all drills down through that, and of course we saw DynamoDB and all sorts of other things from evolve from that in the famous paper by Fowler about the LMAX disruptor. And there's a lot of work that went into making sure we can scale with the focus on that right side. I think everyone was talking about availability, and the sort of fever we all caught from the .com days was, have a popular website, can it just display the information? So we were very focused, at least I felt we were more focused on federating databases and making sure that, there was some response given, and that you never got a 500 error when your users were trying to get at your site. But the deeper problem was the right side, not just making sure your website can work and display information.
So I would like to go into you're opening up a little direction that I definitely want to
see
get
why we
into.
need 2 hours.
Sorry?
See why we need 2
We're
hours?
gonna need way
My
more than
fault.
2 hours, but we'll do part 2 and 3 later on.
Okay.
The Paxos version.
Before we dive deep into what we can do, and I also like to get back to that historic thing, because there was a time where I started to explore. Um, I'm not even sure. I wasn't even exploring event sourcing at the time. I was exploring distributed domain-driven design, and then I
Yeah.
came across event sourcing. And I thought, hey, that's interesting. Let me implement something, and I completely misunderstood it.
I thought it was
But
domain-driven design distributed.
I don't know. But I do know that message ordering is always an issue in distributed systems, so it probably doesn't matter. And nobody really knows what the actual order was. It was probably domain distributed design
Yeah.
um, driven. I know that never came by. But I'm always curious. So I've been explaining what DCB is to for quite a few times, and I found a way that usually works. Actually, I found it easier to explain it to people that don't even know what an aggregate is, because, but when they do, it's like they don't get it. You have to explain it 5 times. Um, but I'm curious, Martin, in your case, what if somebody says, DCB, what is the what's the elevator pitch for it? How do you explain it to people?
Actually, it's not. I think it's not that easy to explain. I, half of the people I explain it to, they don't understand it, and the other half says, I just understood aggregates, and now you come with the next concept. What are you doing? So what is DCB? Basically, it allows us to make decisions in the system on a very small granular level. That's typically how I try to explain it. It's like not having those big aggregates that you need to make decisions. It's like having very, very small aggregates for one decision. You have one aggregate per decision, basically. That's how I typically try to explain it, at least to people who know what an aggregate is.
But then how? No, never mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually what you get after that, right? Or if they do
Yeah.
get it, that's definitely a topic I want to discuss as well. Is how is this going to perform?
Yeah.
Right. We get to the performance on the right side issues again. But
Yeah.
Adam, do you have a take on it? What is your
Yeah. I mean, I think the first time I discussed DCB without having a name for it was during the pandemic, when we had just a ton of online meetups, because obviously we couldn't meet in person anymore. So I believe at least every Friday, if I remember correctly, there was maybe sometimes 20 people showing up online to these things, and we were exploring a lot of event modeling stuff. We had a really large Miro board we worked off of to look at the different concepts and explain some of these things. And we came to the realization, I mean, through a lot of work, leaning on people like Jeremy Chassing and the decider pattern, looking at examining exactly what the parameters to a function would be to make a equivalent command handler, and saying, well, look at this. It's interesting how we're filtering down effectively within what would be an aggregate, just to a subset of the events that we want. And I made the parallel of saying, well, you can say the same thing about object-oriented programming. So where you have maybe a class and 10 methods on it. And of course, there's a state that you have when you instantiate an object using that class, and then you call a method on that object, such as, well, let's use the canonical example of an order. I want to cancel the order. I have an order object. In order for me to have an order object, most of the times you would probably have an ORM maybe underneath, and then you would have your completely hydrated object, populated object, whatever you want to call it, whether you're doing event sourcing or not, it doesn't matter. But then you call that cancel method, and the cancel method, the logic is incredibly dumb. It doesn't really care about any of the constructs there, including the items that are in the order. It just cancels it, meaning it flips a switch. It doesn't really use any of that. So that got me thinking, well, why are we dealing with this object and all the weight that we're bringing in terms of state that we absolutely don't need to populate. And so obviously, referring back to the CIDR pattern, most functional people, you will say, well, of course, that makes sense. That's why we have individual functions that only take into account what they need to. And it's one of the nicer sort of transitions that you have from going from object-oriented to functional, is you can whittle down the parameters to be just what you need and not worry about this OO stuff. So I noticed that there's a parallel between what we're doing in event sourcing as it was born in the domain-driven design community, and taking on this idea of needing to replay all the events relevant to an order just to cancel it, and proposing a ridiculous business requirement that says, I really don't care about how many items are in that order, or what the address is, or what the total dollar amount is. Especially in event sourcing, when we're canceling an order, all we have to do is emit an event, order canceled. Well, if those requirements are quite loose and I can cancel an already canceled order, I could have 0 if statements in that and still that be ready. So why?
And if you cannot cancel a canceled order, you need exactly 1 Boolean.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You need 1 bit.
Yes.
So there's a parallel there of just getting enough context and a subset of the information or subset of the functionality that you have. And so dynamic consistency boundary is really exactly that. That if I want to add an item to an order, I might have more business rules to go through than I do when I cancel an order. And so it felt heavy and suboptimal to have to go through the same heavyweight kind of process to get the object into the one exact state. And I realize why, this was a desirable thing in more traditional object-oriented ways of doing things, because you really wanted any method, no matter how dumb, to be looking at the exact same lump of state, because it wouldn't, each method wouldn't be alien. But that only goes so far, and you start looking that it actually has the opposite effect. It's actually a form of coupling that's a little more excessive, and this is one of those things that I've been noticing, and others in the community have been noticing, is that we still have a bit to go in some of these problems with coupling, adding unnecessary centralization to things where, I like this analogy that people that like to push the don't repeat yourself mantra, a lot of it comes from the TDD groups and all this kind of stuff. The idea and why don't repeat yourself is so popular is because you say, well, when you have a problem that you fix, you have a good abstraction and you didn't repeat yourself. You have one library to fix something here, and all of a sudden it's fixed for the 10 points where you're using it in your workflows. Well, that sounds really positive, but the opposite of that is if one of those things while being implemented breaks that, you break it for all 10 things. And guess what happens more often? It's the breaking. So
especially with AI. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, we should schedule another talk, because I have the version 2 problem that no matter how AI is coming, that everyone is not using event sourcing, and they have this
I do have a feeling that version 2 problem is not a problem yet, because everybody's just starting and building
exactly. So we don't
stuff
have
with AI, and there's no V2, there's no time.
Exactly. We don't have enough vibe-coded large-scale projects to go, oh crap, what do we do? Because the version 2 problem is going to come from the schema migrations, because they're done in a traditional way, and you have a canonical giant single monolithic abstraction that your schema that is.
I want to get back a little bit to DCB, to Neil, to make sure everybody gets a good picture on that. So
back to DCB. Did you want to take over? Go for it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to summarize what you were saying is basically so the way you explain it, because the reason I asked it, I have a certain way of explaining it, but exactly. Everybody has a slightly different angle.
Yeah,
none of them is right or wrong. They're all
just to get me back on track here. I mean, I discovered this in 2020 as something worth pursuing, and I think it started to I got into the coupling part for a number of reasons, because it actually did give rise to other things, such as event versioning to actually not be an upcaster function, that there is a legitimate reason for not making that function and allowing each projection to handle both versions of an event themselves, again, for coupling reasons. So there's a lot of parallels of benefits for what DCB does in other aspects. It's really about really finding all the places where unnecessary coupling is hiding and going to sneak back at you and bite you. And while DCB looks really good for the performance and simplicity stuff, there's also a level of coupling that's at play there that is also taken care of by getting just that right amount of events or data that's relevant for making your decision, instead of trying to always fold up the entire world. And there's some counter arguments why it might be bad for some people, and that some people might need to have the exact same state view.
And that is a very interesting one. So I like your analogy with this OO, right? Where you cram everything into an order because everything is related to an order. And then we have several operations, but the operations might not be as related to each other, all of them, as except
or
for
need this, or need the same information. Yeah,
exactly, right. And that happens a lot. To summarize what you're saying is DCB gives you the opportunity to really have a selection of only what you care about. Right? And in case of order cancellation, if you don't care if an order is canceled already, if you want to mark it as canceled, just put an event there. I don't care about anything, right? Yeah. Or if you do want to know if the order is already submitted, well, check for that event, and you don't need anything else, right? That's
with event sourcing for sure. This makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
So and that's similar to the way I explain it to people. And as I said, I find it easier to explain it to people that don't know about aggregates, because I do feel that aggregates brings them to a place, and then DCB brings them back quite a bit. Like all of these design constraints that you have in aggregate-centric event sourcing, let me say it that way. And some people argue, oh, you don't need aggregates, they're just different streams. Yeah, but then typically you map a stream to an aggregate, so it's the same problem, right? It's just different naming. But open the trunk or open the hood, and you'll see it's the same thing underneath. Yeah. But predefining these, let's say, aggregates or groups, and then forcing a computer to read all of the events in that group and mapping it to something. Why, right? It's not. So, DCB is about describing a selection of what is it that you want to know from the past. It could be nothing. It could be everything. If you really need to know everything to make a decision, well, go for it, right? That will not perform, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but sometimes
not asking for anything will perform. Yeah.
Sometimes those are valid things. I can see like a global, dashboard that shows everything is the canonical example for everything that it needs to know about everything, and it on purpose doesn't perform. And the only way to actually have it is by having an ever-growing materialized view that you update.
Exactly.
Definitely don't want to be recalculating that every day.
And on the command model, you might get some concurrency conflicts, because if you have a problem with anything happening, you will have a problem very often, right?
Well, definitely not on the right side. Yeah.
You know what? You know the counter argument I immediately get when I explain it like that to people. I immediately get a counter argument. Well, if you do it like that, there is no place in the code I can go to where the whole logic is. People are used to this one place they can go to. Oh, there is the order aggregate. If I want to know how an order works, I go there, and there is all the logic, and then I have everything in one place. If that is no longer the case with DCB, how will I find stuff in my code? How will that?
But you can still put the logic in the same class if you really want to, but it doesn't make the logic link to each other, right? Or put it in the same package. Now you don't have to look on the right side of your screen where you have your class contents, but you look on the left where you have your directory structure or package structure, or whatever you want to call it. And there you'll find a list of all the commands I can do. Hey, that's cool. It's really good IDE integration to show you the capabilities of your system. Which is the part I like about DCB, and that is actually very close. But I want to talk about that later. The relation with event modeling, with the slice-based Is it? Did you? Is it architecture? Is it design? Is it something slice-based thingamajig?
I say slice-based architecture. That's my term. I use that.
Yeah,
If we settle on architecture, then that's fine.
I talk about information architecture because it's not, doesn't quite, you're right, Allard, it's not really telling you to use any specific tech stack or any
Exactly.
specific,
But the slice
tool for
orientation or
resource.
slice mindset is very useful.
Yeah, I think
and
it's,
it maps really nice to.
I try to always explain it as the most important architecture is the information architecture, the how everyone understands the information flow, and that can't be just user stories, that can't be just methods and service boundaries. It is tracking where information is over time, and so I tend to invent a term for this, which is information architecture, right? Information flow architecture, something like that. But it certainly helps not to use what people already understand, because that brings a lot of baggage and their preconceptions. So I like to throw out this new term just to allow people to think about it more, objectively without any bias. But we're missing a couple of questions, I think, from.
Yeah,
so
there's. I was going to say there's.
that without
one,
aggregates
I've
one,
been
right?
monitoring them as we went, but there's one interesting one. Without aggregates, what defines the entity, the identifiable subject?
Yeah.
That is interesting because typically when you let's take Adam's example of we want to cancel an order, right? And we haven't decided yet whether you're allowed to cancel orders that don't exist or have whatever state, right? What identifies the cancellation is there must be an order ID somewhere in that instruction. We call it command, right? It has to be there. There has to be some identification in there. So I think the identification of the concepts, and I try to avoid the word entity because it means so many things, but the references to the relevant concepts are there already. So there's maybe if it's an order submitted or order created, whatever, there will be a customer ID in there, maybe a product ID. All those references conceptually already exist, but I think, and I'd love to hear your comments as well, but I think that we are too focused on the order entity. Like, okay, what is an order? It's all this. No, but what is an order to a cancellation? Well, it's nothing because we don't care about anything. Or no, an order to a cancellation is, was it canceled before, or does it even exist, or has it been submitted already, right? And in that case, as you said, Adam, the customer, you don't need to know the customer if you want to cancel an order to execute that business rule. So I think the concept of entity becomes a little bit more vague. Is what does it mean for you at this moment? This order or customer, do you need information of two different concepts, as you will, which does not violate any DDD concept, because the customer could still be, it's still an entity, right? You have a customer, which is an identifier, and conceptually it still evolves over time, and so does the order. But that does not necessarily mean that in our code we must always use it in that form.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the other argument, which or other example, which is the opposite of the cancellation. In the cancellation example, you're removing information that you would ordinarily have in a complete order. You're whittling it down to maybe one or two things, or maybe if you're really extreme, it's nothing. You can always cancel an order even if the ID doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. Cancellation's always there. The opposite is the shopping example I give with the multiple checkout counters, and you have a business rule that all your checkout counters cannot have more than $1,000 worth of items in a scanned order for someone checking out at a till. And there you have an opposite problem of what is the entity, because if you follow the rule of my entity is my order, now you have to have some other entity that coordinates all of them, and you have to think about having to freeze all of your orders to make sure that if any one of them receives another item added, that $1,000 has been extracted. So now I have an entity of entities, which is unnecessary. You just have to think of a different entity called total orders, which can have any event that's to do with orders from any particular traditional entity. So this is an example of where the dynamic consistency boundary moves up instead of down, becoming,
Yeah, exactly.
and so that's equally valid. Now, of course, you run into the distributed transaction problem and coordinating multiple things and two-phase commit across more than two things and all sorts of things like that. So
Well, fortunately, on a technical level, we don't need two-phase commits, but conceptually, there is a phase indeed where you need to check for yeah, consistency,
yeah,
consistency mismatches, if you will. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But that's really important because I mean that especially if you're doing event sourcing, that is quite often. I mean, not even just event sourcing. This idea of having to quote unquote lock down something that breaks what you thought was an entity, that breaking that wall by having to group things together, and even if you might just be interested in one part of it, which in this case would be the total value of that order. You know, so what do? Do you traditionally have to freeze all of these? You might add a concept to make sure that you have some sort of mutex or some other mechanism to say that right now I'm not allowed to add any more items because someone else is adding a scanned item, and you get into all sorts of problems like queues to put your commands in so that you're always executing them against the known state of all of these things, and that just spells a lot of extra logic that you don't really need to have if you relax your rules about what this entity is and say, at this point for this operation, I have a different boundary that is different than an order, and I will use total orders. To get into the details, which I think we need to, there is obviously issues with concurrency, as some operations need to look at the consistency boundary at the traditional order level, while others need to look at all orders as an aggregate. And so now what I like to imagine is that in terms of coordinating this, is indexes can be used for a number of things to retrieve data quickly, but they can also be used as a mutex for locking things down, and or at least putting down a line on the timeline as to when you know a certain level of consistency has, as you know it, this is the total order, total amount of dollars in all orders, and you might elect to do the optimistic or pessimistic locking at that level, but the important thing is that you decide what level, and then you can logically see a tree of locking that you need. You might go the other way too. You might lock a line item in an order at 1.2 to keep pushing that same strategy, but the other way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Martin, you wanted to jump in somewhere.
What I wanted to say is what I see when we have DCB in the meetings and when we discuss how to implement things, we go away from this structured thinking, we go away from this order object where everything is in there, but suddenly what comes up is the terms that the business is really using. The concepts are still there, the customer is there, the order is there, but we talk about the concepts that also the business people are using, and not so much the technical concepts that developers love to discuss. And this is something that DCB really enables for me, and that's
Yes,
one of
exactly.
the really big benefits I see.
I'm glad you brought that up, Martin, because we're nerds and we're flying here about the code concepts and all that, but
Yes.
this is much more easier to understand by a business person, which is a free gift
Absolutely.
to all our technology
Absolutely.
people, right?
Suddenly, you can discuss with a business person, you can discuss what does it mean to cancel an order without mentioning aggregate, without mentioning the order object, without talking about tables. What does it mean to cancel an order? And you can discuss this right away.
And the fun thing is, you can draw a timeline. Like, okay, I've got these 5 orders in my system, right? And this happened. Just put a few events as whatever, sticky notes, whatever representation, and just ask them, okay, can I now cancel this order? And they'll go like,
Yes.
No, you cannot, because
Yes.
whatever happened. Oh, okay, so that's relevant. Can I cancel that order? Yeah, you can cancel that order because that and that did not happen. Neither this or that happened, and that's the only thing you need, right? It's
Yes.
just and this is interesting because for me, at least I mean on the implementation side of DCB, right? I'm using it, but mostly for demos, to be honest. but we're implementing it on our side. And to me, there's no locking in the sense of pessimistic locking. All locking is 100% optimistic in DCB. And we've already seen some performance results from initial adoption that are way better than the more aggregate approach, because if you load an aggregate, you know there's going to be an event at the end of that one. So if you allow something else to do that at the same time, you know you're in trouble, because something will change and something will change the state of this order, and will probably change the customer name. Completely irrelevant to your decision, but for some reason we've decided that no, we need to put it at the end. Guilty as charged, by the way. But we need to put it at the end. Oh, the end moved. Oh, I don't know what to do now. Let's restart, right? So optimistic locking in the aggregate sense did not make sense at all. But now, because those boundaries are very, and to your point, Adam, I think in the majority of cases, you'll see them narrow down.
Yeah.
But there's a few cases where you want that flexibility and make them broader as well, like across orders. Why not, right? I mean, I've actually come across a use case. It's been a while, but it was an auction platform for cars, and apparently those auctions are split into lanes. So one auction has 5 or 6 cars that are auctioned at the same time, and for I don't know why, but for some reason it was important that this cadence was the same for all cars. Probably because you could predict exactly what car would go for auction when, and you would, etc. And they had this problem, like, okay, we have all these lanes, and across the entire system it could be hundreds concurrently, and they have to all change state within 100 milliseconds.
Yeah.
But if I now think about that conversation, the business person didn't understand why this was a problem, because only one thing happens. Auction closed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that time slot is now closed, so any bid that comes in after that is just invalid. Well, with DCB, that's peanuts. You just say, that is a change that is in conflict with what I'm trying to do, so I'm not allowing you to append behind an auction that is closed.
Yeah. But there's you mentioned, instead of narrowing it down, this is one example you found of expanding it. It also works on the levels in between. Let me explain. There are certain consistency boundaries that you might look at one particular event, and for one consistency, you're looking at a subset of its properties inside this in one event, whereas another operation looks at another subset of actual properties within the event. So you can actually go more granular in terms of what that dynamic consistency boundary is, and start to think about, well, I have an item added to the cart and has a quantity. There may be a consistency boundary for, let's say, usage statistics, that you don't really care how many things got put into a cart, but you just care that that type or that particular product was at some point purchased today for whatever reason. So that's a made-up example where you want to ignore the quantity field in the event of an item being placed in that, whereas another one might only look at, maybe your business rule across these orders is to just make sure there's fewer than 100 items or 1,000 items or 2,000 items. And that point, you're not looking at the price in the line item, and you're just looking at the quantity, yet you're using the same event. So you can define your, my point is that I'm really digging down into the indexing that goes on to make DCB happen, because I think that's where the interesting coordination happens. That's where you can actually see, from even a business perspective, where your invariants may contradict and overlap, or kind of Russian.
But do you
doll
think the
on top of
business is
themselves.
interested in that, in knowing how they want to know that the rules are enforced, but would they care how they're enforced?
I think so. I think once you get into a non-trivial sized system, your invariants will often have a danger of being at odds with one another. And it is one thing to look at whether you're given when-thens test that and say, oh, I missed a given when then because we have this weird crossover. I think having an index of what is being used across all my invariants is a map to that. It's sort of like having a compiler tell you ahead of time that it won't work. In this case, the structure of your indexing tells you ahead of time before you even go to any of your given when-thens for invariants to say that, well, you're trying to make a pretty funny looking index here. This is not going to fit, or you're going to, maybe have to think about something another way, or maybe you can't have a certain guarantee that you thought you would have because your total order amount restriction of $1,000 conflicts with your item counts or something because you have some weird overlap of properties in maybe one of the events.
But given when then tests could
they could, but they do it
expose
eventually.
those as well, right? You could say, well, given this happened that I know, and then while I'm taking a decision, this also happened that I'm not aware of. When I try to submit an
I'm not
event,
saying
and
you can't express it with given when-thens. I absolutely think you can and you should, and it should also be readable by business with a given when-then. I just think that there is a natural, just like we have event modeling being the information system kind of backbone of what the system does. It lets everything hang off of it. I think there is also a similar structure of overlapping in terms of all of these dynamic consistencies. Well, how do they actually map out? And so I think of it as a more mature entity relationship diagram that doesn't get distracted by the myriad of all of the different properties you might have in the whole system. And going back 20 years, the poor DBA has to reprint the giant diagram on the side of their cubicle. You have that equivalent here in terms of what your invariants are, and I think it's quite useful conceptually to think about it. I don't know if it's worthwhile to have a visual representation of it, but I certainly think that as a concept, or maybe these days, should I write a skill for it? I don't know. It might be interesting, and it actually might be a helpful way for people to not just understand DCB, but also to coordinate a very large project that may have some overlaps of invariants that you might have missed even with given when-thens. That's my thought.
I'm reading in parallel the
We have a
comments,
very talented person in the chat. Gabriel.
there's somebody who knows I know.
He knows their
course,
stuff.
yeah. So some people might as well just join in and join the discussion.
Yeah.
But indeed, he was hitting on a very interesting aspect. Is DCB is not at all about how it's implemented. Well, it depends.
That's right.
If you're in my seat, it is. But I understand your point. It's about what it enables us to do. Finally, we have the same language as business, and I think that touches a very important aspect, which was a major frustration of me, especially nowadays. I had a workshop on Tuesday, and this customer was showing their the system that they were building, and immediately I map it to DCB concepts, right? What events, what happens, what events do you have, right? So not restricted at all by any concept of aggregates whatsoever.
Beautiful.
And then you see what's built and how a saga coordinates everything, and you're like, wait, there's like 3 technical events to make sure the system does what you want to do based on one thing that happened. And I wondered, so I started a little discussion with them and said, okay, what do these events mean? And they start with this technical discussion. It's like, okay, but if I go get somebody from the room there, right, somebody wearing a suit, and I drag them into this meeting room, and you tell them this story, will they understand? They go like, no. Then actually this event has no place in your code.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even be there. And I think a lot of these events just happen because of those rigid, for example, Adam, the example of those orders, right? You have this cumulative limit of $1,000. What was the example?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that could be from one order, which is easy, but it could also be for 20 orders. So what do? You kind of don't approve them, you start to figure out an approval process. Oh, you're submitting these orders, but wait, let me check the balance across them first before I acknowledge. You get all this, and nobody cares about that, right? There's just a rule that don't spend more than $1,000, and we have to come up with all these technical events. Because ultimately that's a good thing. We do translate everything to events, but they become technical and artificial. And what I've noticed is with DCB, I mean, it's not science yet, but I haven't come across a need anywhere for an event that the business doesn't understand anymore. You can really start with, well, the event model is basically the same thing.
I see this as well. Yeah, I see this as well. So typically, if you implement an event model, there's always this technical things that come in at some point in time, and this completely goes away. With DCB, I don't see this anymore. The event model, which is 100% business focused, is directly translated to code. There's no technicalities in between, and this wasn't the case before. There was always some technicalities. This completely goes away, and I really enjoy that.
And even in non-event sourced world, I did an event modeling workshop at a Dutch grocery store, and they were talking about this checkout process where you could pay your online groceries at checkout, and it was insanely complex. Right, this system has grown and grown, and as we know, right, it all starts very simple. It was old enough to not be vibe coded, but I can imagine that we're going to get so many more of those systems that were so simple at the start, and then day 2, let alone day 3, right?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, it's really the process is really complex. I said, I love it. Let's go, right? Let's say, okay, we've got John. John just did some shopping, right? What did he buy? Okay, he bought this. Great, and then online, right? So you pay. Great. Now John changes his order because you can change your order, and that was a complex part. Then what happened? And you basically had a story like, okay, then this is it. Then up automations. We had a few little projections here and there, so people can actually see what they're doing, and that was it. And they said, yeah, but there's something missing. There's this concept, and I can't even remember the name of that concept. But they said we have this concept in our payment platform that is really important. But if it's really important, why did it never show up in our discussion, right? Nobody talked about it until we realized, well, how does the implementation currently work? And they realized the only reason we have that concept is because of some technicalities inside, and that concept in itself just, I guess that was the TNT under the entire design. It just blew up everything, and it made it really complex. But if you just look at it from a business perspective, it wasn't that complex. And that kind of that session, and that's why it's still there was some emotion involved. I'm like, have we gone this far in our industry that we make things so complex that we can't build something simple anymore?
We did,
right?
And it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And I do feel so let's not blame the aggregate itself, right? Let's blame but everything has its place. But I don't think an aggregate has a place in event modeling because everything is nice and easy, and then add an aggregate to it, and suddenly you get massive discussions.
Right? Yes.
And things don't map anymore. Whereas if you just say, well, I've got my give and when thens, and I don't accept this because this happened. Okay, great, right? We start to see consistency boundaries because apparently the fact that happened is important to this. So that occurrence is important. Let's move on.
Yeah.
We don't need an aggregate to understand that. Yeah.
But sometimes you cannot stop these discussions. A few weeks ago, I was working with a team, and this team was very experienced, really senior people, but we couldn't get across this aggregate discussion. They were discussing, okay, what is the aggregate here? What is the aggregate there? This was the whole workshop. I couldn't stop it. It came back again and again and again. And this was really, really interesting. So it was really, nobody enjoyed that workshop, and me the least, because we couldn't get across this discussion. It was really strange workshop.
Yeah. But to me, DCB is really about something that allows to shed extra concepts that I don't need to bring into discussion, and it gets out of the way for discussing the business, yet it captures conflicts effectively still that you need to capture, such as competing business rules, where you are building something stupid. You still have that, but I think, like from to both your points, yeah, that entire technical part is that, but even from the business perspective, there's stuff that's also removed, because I mean, even our event modeling practices before, I used to have swim lanes that would have the streams per entity in there too, if you wanted to go that route. I stopped pushing that a long time ago because I see that those are a lot of times premature optimizations. And guess what? Abstractions are optimizations, and you can do those prematurely too.
And I noticed a lot of discussion, or maybe not discussion, but a lot of the assigning to swim lanes happens based on which noun is the strongest associated with a particular verb that you're talking
yeah.
about,
Yeah.
right? So a customer buys a product. Yeah, a customer does a lot of things, so let's assign it to product, right? Okay, is that really an argument? I don't know. It's yeah. So
Yeah,
it's really difficult to put these things in one clear swim lane, right?
yeah, I definitely have much more confidence in pushing out decisions. I think DCB helps the mindset that event sourcing tries to promote, which is that you can pivot later more flexibly. I think if you come from the traditional roots of event sourcing and domain-driven design, you have a lot more upfront that you don't need necessarily. And we try to get through that through workshops and to at least agree on something. But even as a group, we can be wrong. Even if we have agreement, we can still be wrong, or the business might change enough that our initial abstractions are no longer the best solution. And
Of
so
course.
there's many reasons why you should move off a lot more of your decisions into the future. I think, yeah, the DCB way of working, and from my perspective, that index for consistency is an important concept that I want to drive deeper into, because I think overlaying that on the event model itself could be very useful. And the tooling that I'm working on with our well, together with Martin, looking at the additions to the Miro board that Martin did for doing completeness check. There's an opening for a similar piece of functionality. Where's the competing business rule check? You could easily do a static analysis to say, I have some stupid stuff going on here. You have business rules that are overlapping in a really ridiculous way. You don't have a well-nested set of indexes that will cause you
It could be a
problems.
really good sanity check to say, this action will compete or conflict with these actions at the same time concurrently, right? So you can easily
Exactly.
identify those, and that can also give you a good check. Like, hey, wait a minute, why does cancellation compete with creation? Because we said you can always cancel an order no matter what.
Yeah.
At least you detect it. Yeah.
And this goes a longer way to those people that think you need to design events. I don't think you need to design events. I think you need to events just capture a transaction best. That is not the place to do any modeling at that finite level, that very small focused level. I think event-driven design, if you want to call it that, is really at how to use these events as bricks to build something. But eventually there will be a problem where you made a suboptimal decision to capture too many things on one particular screen, and those particular properties end up together in an event. And I think this analysis of the indexing can say that this won't work. It looks nice on this screen, but you have a few workflows here and other places that really are competing against all of these properties having sitting in the same event. And you should consider using 2 or 3 events and adding some automations, or maybe even to the point of driving a wizard, or at least chain some automations to kick off the creation of 3 events instead of putting all of this in one. So I think you can get those really intelligent ways to quote unquote design your event, but it comes from an empirical, logical place, not a subjective, I have a sixth sense about this, not being optimal, or in my experience, this was a problem before. Get real reasons for doing it that is told to you by the solution you're proposing. The analysis of the information that you're tracking through the system should tell you that. And hey, let's sprinkle on the AI on that, and the AI can do that for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do that already. That helps a lot. Just talking to your event model, talking to events, does that make sense and stuff like that? It becomes so much easier if there is no aggregate involved and stuff like that.
I have this feeling that you're using AI to bring your event model to life, to talk
Yes.
to
I do.
a way to speak to it.
I chat with my event model and it answers and it tells me, no, you cannot do that because it doesn't make any sense.
And do you give them names as well?
No, I'm not that far.
Okay. You said something, Adam, a few sentences ago, but that I do want to reiterate and stress, because we did talk about the DCB allows you to narrow down the scope of what you care about, which is obviously a performance improvement. The less you care about, the faster you get everything you care about and move on. You can also be more flexible and larger, of course, with risks, because you'll increase your conflict surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. But I almost forgot about that one, is over time, right? It's not just big or small, but it's also a moving target. And we have a comment like, has DCB taken us out of the tar pit? Maybe it's more like quicksand. Because the more you struggle the aggregate, the more you get sucked into it. But I think that is a very important aspect where any project that we work on day one, we never know what day 365 is going to look like.
Yeah, your business will change.
Everything will change, right? And our understanding of the business changes. So we're building. So everything changes, right? And so to have something, and I remember explaining to people probably a decade ago, like, okay, you don't need big design up front, but you have to think about your aggregate boundaries, because they are the most difficult ones to change. Because basically within an aggregate, you could change whatever you wanted. It doesn't matter, right? But so you had a tendency to rather choose them large, because then your surface of change is easier. But of course, your concurrency just drops to 0. You get the system aggregate. But which is it always works, right? It's easy because you have one place in your code where you can see what everything does.
Easy.
Third class,
yeah.
right?
You have to use that one, system aggregate. That's good.
But I mean, that's also very often the argument. A lot of people argue the aggregate works for me. Yes, until you change it. Have you ever tried to change a bigger aggregate in production? Good luck with that. This is really not fun.
Yeah. This is also why I criticize TDD, because they're all saying, oh, it's really easy. Just, you shouldn't change, you shouldn't be testing implementation. Just test at this level of abstraction, this seam, and then you can refactor everything in there. Well, reality check, your seams change, and now you have a mountain of unit tests to change, not just your implementation. So yes, it did double your effort to have tests that cover everything as well. But but I can throw AI at it, which gets us to another point, which maybe you probably don't have time for this topic this time. It might be a good segue to the next one, which is the digging into the AI slop vibe coding problem that we're all going to face very, very shortly, as we're getting to the point where people are vibe coding solutions that are actually getting into production. They're done in the traditional sense, and it embodies everything that is a problem in the traditional sense, such as gigantic schema migrations. Schema migrations from V1 to V2 can entirely destroy projects. And I've been there where it was easier, I keep using this story, it was easier to backport features to what was already installed at a customer than to migrate them to the new version. Did you just hear what I said? That's ridiculous. And it doesn't go away with AI. In fact, it's worse with AI. The counter argument is that AI will help you with the migration.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem is that the complexity of what you're building is x to the power of x. The capability of migrating all the coupling that you've introduced and all of those things, the capability to deal with that is only x to the power of 2, a curve that doesn't rise as fast as the problem creation curve. So yeah, AI is very powerful, but you're going to use its power to offset that, oh, these models aren't powerful enough to deal with the mess I made. I have to wait a year until the next opus gets released so that I can deal with the migration. So is this gap going to widen? Are we going to have systems that are so big that, you know, all of this is just going to keep burning megawatt hours just to get out of this? We don't have that problem if we're doing event sourcing. So the world is going to have a come to Jesus moment about event sourcing, accountability for information, traceability of where things came from, because that is what untangles that entire problem, where the companies that don't do that are going to die. We already see this in the market today. You look at the proliferation of, like, hey, Walmart's doing much better than Target. Why? Well, Target adopted Jet.com, which used event sourcing. They bought it for the technology. Somehow they're able to take care of logistics. When Target wanted to come to Canada, they couldn't open a store because they didn't have the accountability system underneath. They couldn't do even metric to empirical conversion from the US to Canada. And every single Target store in Canada closed. You're going to see this across the entire industry. If you're not doing event sourcing and you don't have accounting for your information systems, and no, a backup is not accounting, that's what's going to separate the successful companies from the bad ones. Anyone that's, AI accelerates all practices, including bad ones, good ones and bad ones. And we're going to have a very, very bad realization very quickly because of AI of what those bad practices are. And excessive coupling is the number one. And
I recently
it hides in
read
many
it.
places, like the schema migrations and all these things. Anyway, off my soapbox. Go ahead, Allard.
No, it's. I think you hit it spot on. The tar pit paper, yeah. But this is a bigger tar pit than just the little tar pit of the aggregate. Like, this is us as
That's a huge
as
one.
an entire planet.
It is.
But
We're
there
all
was
heading
this,
there.
this
It's scary.
this article, and there was a mention of, and I like the quote: "We've invested billions and billions in current state architecture."
Yeah.
Right? In just keeping information about how things are right now. But if you look at the reality is, we don't really care that much about right now. We care much more about the why or how, right? And how did we get here? Or in the, actually it's funny that you mentioned accounting in the context of a grocery store, because I just had a discussion last week with a very large US grocery store, and they had an accounting challenge. Like, these guys, of course, have a lot of stock in warehouse and shops, and every product has a certain value at a certain moment in time.
Yeah.
But you can imagine that some lettuce has a certain value today, but tomorrow is not going to be worth the same thing anymore, right? That depreciation is on an hourly basis almost. So, so when was evaluation done? When did you check your stock? And it's impossible to look at two things at the same time.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It is impossible if you look at current state systems.
Yeah.
Because you can either look at that state or the other one, but not both at the same time.
Yeah. Unless you start building
but
history tables and all this garbage, and
that's
guess
funny.
what happens there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that navigation across time to know what was true when is so important, and
Yeah.
we haven't spent. I mean, how much did we in the event sourcing community spend on improving this? Definitely not a millionth of what has been spent on current state infrastructure,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And but I
it's
think
crazy.
that's the step we need to make, especially for AI, because as you said, um, um, it's going to speed up the create whatever we are creating is going to go faster.
Hmm.
Yes.
Is the mess that we're creating what we want to go faster? Definitely not, right? We need
Yeah.
to be much more mindful
Yeah.
of this. And I
I
think the combination of event sourcing, event modeling drastically helps.
Yeah.
Well, my personal opinion is obviously some frameworks and guide rails for AI will also help. Like, okay, do it like this. Here's an example. Just code me 25 more of those examples. I mean,
Yeah.
in the end, in event modeling, how many patterns do you have, right? It's
Yeah.
not. It's so boring you can't even write a book about it because there's
Yeah.
too few
I'm
patterns. It would be a
trying.
really
Yeah.
I tried. It was possible. But that's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's why it works so well to run it in a loop. Just do the same thing again and again and again. It's like on Sunday we called it painting by the number. It's
Yeah.
painting by the number. You just copy and you fill in some template variables. That's it. That's a slice.
Yeah.
That you can use the cheapest model you can find and it still works.
Yeah, I have that aha moment in that YouTube video for over a year ago, a year and a half ago, where on that stupid model, I pasted in those given when thens from behind, literally that model that I have behind me, and the stupid model in the initial cursor release got it in one go. It didn't hallucinate, and it even gave me one extra test case, one extra given when then that I missed. So when you can do that with a dumb model from a year and a half ago, why are we pushing what's capable here? 99% of the systems that we have out there is pushing information. It's information accounting. It's your grocery store, like you said. It's your insurance company. These are the day-to-day things that are absolutely falling over because of their own complexities that they don't need to be falling over at all. And yeah, I had another point that'll come to me in a second.
There's an interesting comment here. Even with DCB, there are going to be slices that fold the same events in the same way. At what point do they say, okay, let's build an abstraction for it? Well, my
well,
answer is obvious.
there's a name for the abstraction, right?
No, I didn't. No, I don't. But I mean, this all points, of course, to the aggregate. At what point do you say this is all the same thing? Why not just build an aggregate for it and reuse it everywhere? My answer is never. Why would you do that? Makes no sense.
Why would it fold the same way? Maybe you can give us an example of where there might be similarities, but I think similarities are exactly what
Well,
makes
Well,
dry
but
so dangerous.
there might be
right?
something else hidden in that comment, and I've noticed this in abstracting the common, we're after the common notation for event modeling. What is the standard notation for event modeling? In so doing, you have I think what might be getting at here is that we might have the same command being used in different parts of the workflow. And so there is a difference between a slice and a workflow step. The slice is the definition of that command that may be used in different workflow steps, the same one. So I think a lot of people, I'm guilty of it too, because I wasn't disciplined enough to give a different name to the different concept. And as I'm working through the documentation, or sorry, the standard way to store an event model, I notice this, that I have to have a catalog of commands that I have, and then I need to use them in different steps in the event model itself. To add to that, it may be different screens that kick off the same command sometimes. Especially if you have a mobile app versus web app or versus some automated process, they certainly should be using the same thing. And I think that's a good enough level of reuse that I'm comfortable with. But even then, sometimes I say, I'm just going to copy paste this, and I'm going to,
Of course.
and I'm going to add whatever, extra property here instead of making that a nullable property across all of these things. The null check is really important to me. I want to avoid nulls as much as possible. To me, from an information design point of view, screams as an anti-pattern, I need to now think about what I'm capturing in a different way. But that's about it. I just wanted to make sure that last comment gets addressed.
Yeah.
For me also, for me it's perfectly fine to have 3 slices that look exactly the same but just have a different name because they are used in different places.
Yeah.
3 projections using the very same information, projecting to the same table with the same structure. That's perfectly fine for me. I'm happy to copy this.
Yeah.
If it's different concepts.
Yeah, I'm almost allergic to don't repeat yourself now. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are best when you just repeat them 3 times.
It is, and
And,
you know, back
and
to
I do want to stress that in the because I had to read it a few times, but if you do have let's say a certain state, like maybe the total amount of an order is important in a lot of decisions that you make. Well, you could still build a little class that gives you the total order amount, and it is created based on a predefined set of events, and then obviously you're interested in those events, but maybe also others as well, depending on what state. You could still say, you know what, I'm going to reuse this object. You could, whether you should or not, is a different discussion, right? But you could technically, but that does not mean that thing has become an aggregate. It's just a way to declare. You know what? The total amount of an order is rather annoying to come because it's item added, item removed, count changed, tax region changed, maybe whatever, etc., etc. It could all those things could change the order amount. Okay, great, but let's build it's almost like a domain service style in DDD, but make a little reusable component that says if you care about the order amounts, here's a class that gives you the ability. So there's ways to do it, and
there's
definitely space between that and the aggregate.
Yeah, to the business person, I would say that here's some dashboards that show you whether these things are being met or not, or what the totals are, or whatever. Doing it from that perspective helps, but. There's another interesting question that popped up here, which is, have we got rid of the accidental complexity? I
almost.
Well, I don't call it accidental complexity because that's a catchy term that technical people like to throw around. There's other problems with that term too. It just lumps everything as technical debt or something. What most people mean when they're talking about accidental complexity is the side effects when they're implementing something, and that boils back to coupling. It's like, do we have excessive coupling is the better way to put that, because that's always the hidden reason behind why things topple over. And what we just talked about, making a copy, even if it looks identical, but used for a different workflow step. I do it because it decouples the work. Because I know that in 365 days, that may not be the case. And I don't want to be replacing 12 different workflow steps. I want to be replacing 2 or 3 instead. And so that's inherently the coupling that I want to avoid. And also, if people are working on different parts of the system at the same time, I don't want to have to coordinate something between 2 people if I don't have to. I don't want this ridiculous idea that you have a pizza-sized team. But one of the interesting things about how we're heading into this industry with these bad tools and bad practices, as you said, Allard, and how AI is pushing us to really fall over faster, because what we're doing is we're building things for things that are ineffective. You look at the effectiveness of an industry by the amount of projects the amount of companies and projects that operate on fixed cost basis. And you rarely have that in software, yet you have that in other disciplines, where you can say that I can do this project for X amount of money. The maturity of an industry is directly proportional to how many projects exist on a percentage basis, on a fixed cost basis versus time and materials. And we are at the bottom. We are doing the plumbing in the world. We have no comparison to other engineering disciplines. It's horrible.
We are also the youngest of engineering principles with
Yeah.
disciplines,
But
which gives us a small excuse, right?
Yeah, well,
but it's time to grow up.
Very small excuse because the constraints that we also have had the most innovation and the most opportunities to improve that we allowed the people that are making money to keep back from us.
Yeah, exactly. So the way I interpret at least the term of accidental complexity is if you compare the complexity of the solution that you've built with the complexity of the problem you're solving, that difference is you want that as small as possible, because the essential complexity, as it's sometimes called, is that's just how the business is, right? The business works in a certain way, and in most cases it is not actually that complex. Sometimes it's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit difficult to understand. Like, okay, how does accounting work? I mean, from 30,000 feet, it's pretty simple. But if you dive into it, it's actually not that simple. And of course, there's some stuff you need to understand. But the solution that we build should definitely, please, not be more complex than that. And I think the number of technical events that you use is a really good, like, how many events do you have in your system that if you were to write their name on a piece of paper and go into the hallway and ask people, what does this mean? And if they can't tell you what it means, you're probably just building something that is outgrowing the complexity of the problem.
Very often it's hard to see. It's hard if you're working on it. It feels completely natural what you're doing, until someone from external tells you, well, what the heck are you doing here? This makes
exactly
sense.
But it makes sense. Let me explain it to you.
No.
We should not be in a position where we explain. We should be in a position where we listen, right? That's actually a good comment. Business might not be complex, but it's poorly documented and communicated, and I think that is one of the biggest challenges for us is the difference between something that is unknown and something that we don't know yet, because we have to figure it out.
And it's the reason we use event modeling, because it brings people to the same table. We want to have the understanding by technical people to be on the same space as the explanation by the business people. That has to be on the same canvas. That's a hill I will die on, because the root of the problem is these silos of people using different tools because their jobs are built for it. Meanwhile, everyone that's keeping people thinking this way is busy counting their money because they've sold solutions to perpetuate those silos.
And I think there's an AI angle in this. If the business doesn't get clear answers from us, or clear discussions at least, if we keep on using words, and I when I do an event modeling session, I have a list of forbidden words. I don't want people to talk about aggregates. Saga, out the door. Just call it automation, right? And even though maybe for you technically they're the same thing, doesn't matter. Use the word automation, because then everybody understands the term. But as soon as you throw in one technical term, the business starts to zone off, because it's a Pavlov reaction, right?
Immediately,
Because we've trained them that we are a bunch of nerds and we're going to throw terms at you that you don't understand, but let us explain it to you. And I think it's time for us to get back into our seat and just let the business explain to us what things are, and we should ask clarifying questions. And event modeling is indeed a good vessel for that.
Last year at the Como camp, I also gave an event modeling workshop, and somebody mentioned aggregate, and I forced this person to buy me drinks in the evening. Maybe we should start to do that with the business persons.
I don't think my liver could take it.
You can choose a glass of water, but it will not hit them as hard as it should.
Exactly. But I think back to the main point about DCB is really not something we should explain to a business person. I think it's the other way around. It's like we have to look at ourselves as technical people. Why have we allowed complexities to infiltrate what we do and make that communication with business people that much harder? We're not actually, by trying to be overly clever or whatever, we're actually hurting our integration with those that give us projects and pay for them. which is shooting yourself in the foot from my perspective. And so if we can find that common ground to be greater, and an event model does the best job at that, my unbiased opinion. So we need to continue to push that forward to not even have to understand why there's a swim lane or a sub-swim lane, and to just listen to the business person, a domain expert, or AI in some cases, tell us that I just want to care about these things to do this. And I don't need to fight them on, well, this is part of a bigger thing that you have to consider. Why? Did I say I need to look at those other things?
Yeah.
That's the discussion that the aggregate unfortunately kicks off, which I think gets in the way.
But
I just smiled because I read the comment just now. You
Yeah.
know you're using DCB right if you never have to utter the term DCB.
That's right.
Pretty much.
I think
it's
that
funny
sums
because
it up.
well, what were we talking about, Martin, in one of the podcasts? Was that why does DCB sound so complicated? It should be the other way around. Like, we should have the aggregate sound more complicated. We need a bigger acronym for, domain-driven, design-based, aggregate consistency, static boundary. What is that as an acronym? We should, okay. Or you could just do DCB. You have a choice.
Exactly.
But Allard, I think you are the closest to the source. So do you see adoption already? So what is the market saying about DCB?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's two aspects of it. So yes, I am forced to talk to it about the business because it differentiates our solution to some of the other solutions that are out there. And I actually find it really easy to explain, and I just give them a timeline and I ask them, can you make a decision based on this? Yes, I can. Great. That's how it should work, and that's how it works. Period. End of. There's no term DCB required for that.
Yeah.
But of course, if you give it a name, I mean, if you look at these commercials on television, especially for these facial products, they mention terms, and it sounds really interesting. But if you really dive into it, you definitely don't want to put that on your face. But never mind. And sometimes, it's a marketing gimmick to say, that's DCB. Great, fantastic.
Yeah.
But and I would say for the aggregate, it's true as well. If you don't have to mention an aggregate, then you have done a good job. Unfortunately, I've never been in a situation where we could not mention an aggregate and do a good job. I do. So from the engineering side, I do get mixed feelings or mixed reactions, and depending a little bit how philosophical they are and how attached they are to the aggregate. Because I do have a feeling that some have found a way in specific clients or customers that they have, I think as well, because in some domains, there's projects where it was really clear, that's an aggregate, let's go. Hey, 2 years later, it never had to change. Fantastic. If you find yourself in those kinds of projects or problem environments, let's say, I can imagine you think like, yeah, but that doesn't solve a problem I have. Fortunately, I do see other situations, and I was at a customer yesterday, actually the day before yesterday, but and they were explaining this. They have a fairly simple system, but there were some sagas. I said, okay, what do these sagas do? Oh, they coordinate this and that. Okay. And they wanted to know about DCB, and I said, if you take DCB, this is how you would model it. And he said, I will have no sagas. I said, well, were those the only sagas you had? Yes. Well, then you will have no sagas. They're not needed in this system, not at all. And with the saga disappearing, which is just one class, you also have a lot of cognitive load about how your system works, which disappears. So there's some excitement on that, and there's a comment that we received recently about somebody who moved to Axon 5 and DCB, and they are very AI invested, and he said the efficiency of the models generating good code has gone up tremendously when using. So they were already using event modeling, but now because basically the slices just map to a very nice predefined pattern. There's no room for hallucinations, right?
Yes. It's impossible, literally.
It doesn't have enough tokens to hallucinate.
Yes.
But and he said the productivity went up dramatically in building that system. Yeah.
I see that also.
Skills. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see a few mention of skills now. I'll briefly comment on that. Yes, I'm working on some skills that we can share. Like, hey, if you're building an Axon application, which of course is what I mostly care about personally, but here's some skills to do it right. And I think if we combine that with a few skills of how do you properly interpret an event model, there's some general rules. Combining a few of those skills is going to be very useful. Unfortunately, just like DCB, sometimes necessary to use and explain. It would be better if the AI was just trained on proper software in the first place. But in the meantime, we can use those skills, and they're actually not that complex. Those skills, they're not that long. They're fairly straightforward. I know Martin has a few.
But it only works if you do it right. So it's not the skills that make this possible. The possibility is if you remove the coupling from the architecture, that enables this. It's not the skills. You can write beautiful skills. If your architecture is crap, it will never work. It's doomed to fail. You need this slice-based architecture. Then it starts to work.
Yeah. If anyone's interested, so our workshops generally are event modeling and event sourcing, but now there's 3 topics. It's obviously event modeling and event sourcing and AI via what can you get your skills files to do for you, because Martin has a larger Ralph loop skill. I have a finer grained set of skills for creating the event models. So if you want to learn both of them, shameless plug, go to our workshops. It's on our website, and you can pick one for any month of the year. We've predetermined all the dates for the entire year. So if you're interested in any of the stuff, you can do that at any point. If you're using Exonic, it'll work with that. So, come and learn those things. But the important part is that we can't dodge this topic any longer, because AI is here taking over what you're doing, what you're thinking about, is at least the very repetitive things. Those are things you're not going to be doing much anymore. So if you're going to be relevant, you have to be kind of AI first, unfortunately, and it's kind of back to the .com era and before, where if you don't have an online presence, you will quickly be forgotten and you won't be able to survive in tomorrow's market. We're facing the same challenge now with AI, for better or worse. But so all those people that are wanting to throw everything we're saying into a bunch of skills files, you can get our help in doing that.
So what is a minimal viable event model? What needs to be in the .json file? So
a minimum viable event model. That's an interesting term.
One slice, right? Are you ready to generate?
One slice.
Yeah.
Yes, it's one slice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Actually, you don't
what's a
need
meaningful
that much
system?
Context either, right?
Yeah. What's a meaningful system? One that can be changed, one that's static. I think a minimum system might be something that has just one green box that shows something to a user. If your system is just saying the sky is blue, then that's thought of as a minimal system. But I think most people will have to accept that there is a fundamental input and output to a system. So I think a minimal event model has 2 slices from my pragmatic perspective.
That's a common misunderstanding I see very often. You don't give the full event model to AI to generate. I only look at one slice at any point in time, only one slice. So the minimum viable event model is exactly one slice. You don't need more than that. One slice is enough.
Yeah. But you also call an automation one slice, which is to me 2 slices.
Yeah.
Let me step back a little bit. Let's figure this
we're in
out.
violent agreement with one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So there's a comment. We use sagas to publish new commands after a series of events. How can DCB replace a saga?
It's a projection.
Yeah, exactly.
A to-do list, like to-do lists. Look up to-do lists in event modeling. They replace almost every complicated concept in any system. Does that make sense?
It does
I
to me.
think
But,
I think sagas. So I didn't use a saga in I don't know 2 or 3 years. I don't use them at all. I don't need them. I don't see the point in them. But people who are used to sagas, they have a hard time to get away from this mental model. Okay, what should I use instead? And this has nothing to do with DCB. This becomes simpler with DCB, but to get rid of the sagas, you first need to understand, okay, what does this even mean? And for us, it's to-do lists. To-do lists, simple projections, and automations that act on them. That's the thing I use.
Yeah, you can string them together, do whatever,
Yes.
but you know, any concept that's an abstraction, any abstraction is subjective. It is a subjective decision where I would rather have the data tell me what's going on rather than force it through what's convenient for me at the time to think about things. You know, I don't. I've given up on sagas as well because I just see when you strip it down to the bare essentials, it is just another projection of state, and then you create something that looks at that state and issues a command based on the contents of it, and everything can be whittled down to that. And whether it's a human being pressing buttons on a screen or an automation looking at a state view, green box, read model, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing.
Yeah, now the comment is with that, you don't need DCB. So the problem is you don't need DCB to get rid of sagas, but if you have the aggregates, the aggregate is always a problem. The one point that was always problematic in the AI generation was the aggregate. Everything is easy until you get to the aggregate. And then no matter how good your prompts are, how good your skills are, it always gets messy. No longer with DCB. Everything is easy. And this is all. This is the same for to-do lists. So there is no complexity in those systems anymore. Everything becomes easy.
Yeah, you people have this aversity to simplicity because I think
Yeah.
there's a natural, we're like moths to a flame when it comes to making complex systems. We feel smart, we have security because we thought of this complex thing. Now no one can take our job because I understand this thing and no one else can. So those are dysfunctional reasons. There's also functional reasons why you might want to create something, you know, intricate and interesting. But simplicity is the hardest challenge to, you know, how much can we shed? Event modeling was built on how much stuff can I throw away and still be active, knowing that it's a hard problem to solve because you could accidentally throw out something incredibly useful that will now slow you down. And so everything that we've thrown away in event modeling has been put through that gauntlet, through 10 years of AdaptTech to see whether we actually can survive as a company by doing the bare minimal. And our findings are that yes, an emphatic yes. Every single thing we've thrown out was another shackle around your legs, another ball and chain. You know, I recently posted on LinkedIn a Olympic runner with a giant tool.
I like that image.
You know, with because holding a giant wrench, plumber's wrench in one and another saw or something in the other, and all these tools are falling off them. You can't compete weighed down by all the crap in this industry. And so event modeling was, well, where can we have that small Swiss Army knife that does so much for so little? So I don't want to add a saga. That's another moving part. Adding more and more gears to a machine just makes those gears harder to turn. Make a Lego set. Get a Lego set with a lot of gears. Make all those gears interact and try turning one at one end. See how much harder it gets every time you add a gear. That's what we've been doing in this industry. And the people that are selling the gears are super happy. Gravy train has come to an end. Like with AI, this stuff's going to be done for you. I can replace the database with a simple file-based system way faster than I could have ever before. And, you know, software industry right now, the software indexes in the market are plummeting because people can do with one license for something what they had to buy 10 licenses for. No one realizes that Adobe now will sell 10% of what they used to sell. And they're wondering why the price hasn't stopped dropping yet. We're only seeing the beginning. And you got to go after simplicity to survive this. So that's all I have to say on the saga matter.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure there's more. Let me find where to poke. I will find. No, but what I wanted to stress, because I think there's maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding about what I meant with all the sagas disappearing. There's a lot of sagas existed to make sure that when something happened in one part of the system, another part of the system would also react to the fact that it happened.
Yeah.
And this happens when you have two aggregates that are somewhat related, and something happens to one, and now the other also needs to behave differently because it happened to the one. But it can't behave differently unless there's an event in its timeline to express that something relevant happened. So what you get is these extra events that you just carry over to somewhere else that are just technical events. They exist for a technical reason, not for any business reason. So the business
Exactly.
occurrence of an event is one, but the technical representations of something happening is now, well, n, where n is unfortunately sometimes significantly larger than one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And then you use a saga to coordinate that, right? So it's not that the saga in itself is wrong. It's the aggregates caused this and needed the sagas as the glue. Now you take the aggregate away, and those sagas disappear. And what you have left is these few things where you do have, well, automations, proper automations, right? If this and that happens on that side, then I want to do something on the other side. Well, yeah, that still exists, but it is really a different occurrence of something. Than
The thing that I always found troubling is the aggregate kind of sitting outside of the replacement of entities, sitting at that saga level. Now you have this imagined thing that needs to be created, and it kind of doesn't fit what the business thinks about it. Sometimes you might want to make an aggregate out of a process, but most businesses are worried about orders and whether they're moving through or not. So there's this, whether that's right or wrong doesn't matter, but you have, either a verb or noun focused sense of an aggregate in all these systems. And so the saga always felt clumsy and overkill for what we ended up just using to-do lists for. But that's my experience. I used to use them. We still have solutions that have sagas in them from customers that were doing that, and they work. I'm not saying they won't work, but why not use something simpler when a simpler solution's there? It's
Yeah.
going to pay in dividends to have something that's more simple.
I mean,
But
we're
simple
talking
is
about
hard.
we're talking about simplicity. That's one way to make systems significantly simpler. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think having a system that only needs 4 different types of Lego blocks and you could build just about anything, to me sounds rather simple, right?
Yeah, the fewer moving parts, right? It's
Yeah.
about that. If I need to, again, it's a patterns paralysis problem. Reading the 50, thinking that you need to use 50 patterns to automate a system because the patterns book has that many is a huge problem. Like, you shouldn't have to study a book to see what patterns you would have. The fewer simple patterns you have, the more that you will have in terms of examples and iterations, like wax on, wax off, like Karate Kid. You're using very small movements, often repeatedly, so you're excellent at them. And that benefit is realized through many perspectives, whether that's predictability by a business person looking at an event model. They don't expect to scratch their head, oh, what the heck are they doing here? I haven't seen these boxes before, or this type of interaction. Everything's predictable. So
But
there's
with event modeling, it's no fun to play pattern bingo.
yeah, exactly. Like I know, oh, is this an observer pattern? Oh, we have a factory pattern here, or we have a, whatever,
I don't.
strategy
I would.
pattern here, and
Singleton, remember?
singleton. Oh,
But
that's my favorite.
It went from
I
pattern to
only use
anti-pattern.
singleton.
I
Singleton's
wouldn't even
my
know.
favorite.
I wouldn't even know where to place all those
Global
patterns
state.
anymore. There's no
Zero
place in the
scalability.
slides. Yeah.
Which was it's interesting if you put all these things in a time perspective, right? What was the big problem at the time? Software was getting a little bit more complex. People had to reason about it. Okay, it made all sense. But and this is a point I make a lot in my presentations. Actually, every opportunity I'm going to make it. We are using the patterns from the 70s to solve 2020's problems.
Yeah.
That does not work. These problems are so different. The scale of things
But not only
the
that,
scale of the complexity, the tools that we have, etc. Is just
it's worse
it's a
than
different
that.
world.
But it's worse than that because the patterns that we have from the 70s were from a technical era where disk drives were prohibitively expensive, meaning that
Exactly.
there was absolutely no way you could have an audit-first system, which is why we're in this mess in the first place. Like the
Exactly.
storage was incredibly
Connectivity
expensive.
practically non-existent. Right?
Yeah. So that's why we're in a current state only mindset in this entire industry, which is horrible and is a real setback for anything that you want to do. It's the reason we have excessive coupling. It's the reason behind any of the dysfunctions. I mean, that core reason just spreads out through all these tentacles into schema migration nightmares. Every single problem you have in the industry can be traced back to that trade-off of compute versus storage in the initial decades. People say that, oh no, SQL is good because it was built to query data better. It's like, no, a fish doesn't know it's in the water. People just accepted that storage was extremely expensive and they built mechanisms and systems around don't repeat yourself and third normal form for everything and all of these things. And it's kept us back for decades.
So now it's time to shake off that 50 years of rust that we've accumulated and just whack it off and
Yeah, I like that.
let's move on.
And AI is doing that. AI is smashing this and that incompatibility of the fact that you need next year's large language models to solve the crazy coupling that current large language models will create for you is what you can save yourself by doing things correctly.
Although I've also read that the language models that are currently larger are not necessarily more efficient or better at
Well, regardless of
solving the
what it
problems
is,
than
whether
the
it's a
one.
larger model or a faster, smaller model that's smarter, it really doesn't matter. In the end, what you're outputting is a larger amount of highly coupled code.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with
So
that.
it really doesn't matter. I'm just saying in general.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the models in a year from now might not actually be good enough to solve the problems that you've generated today.
Oh yeah. No, I agree.
That's possible. That's possible.
What was it? The bullshit asymmetry principle probably also applies to AI.
Yeah. Exactly. I totally agree. Yeah, what else do we need to bring up?
There's one aspect. I think we covered it, but there's a lot of people immediately go into the. But what about performance when talking about DCB?
Yeah.
And I find it hard to. Well, of course we did some performance tests and on the technical implementation of things, and it's actually just as fast, slightly faster even. If you limit to one tag, which is what you do with an aggregate, it is even faster than it was. If you do two, if you have excessive tags, it becomes slower because there's more to check, right? So okay, great. But I think we can circle back to what you said, Adam, in the beginning. If you only care about two attributes of something, or two events, if you will, then you just read those two events. Why do you read the entire aggregates line history just to figure out, oh, cancel an order? Well, I don't need to check any state anyway. Let me just cancel order and put an event at the back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how is that for performance? So I'm always wondering where, maybe you've got information about that, but I wonder where does that fear of performance come from? Is it pure technically? How are you going
It's
to
purely
arrange
the people that
multiple-
say, well, everything's a function that has to look at everything in the past. And so, when you look at DCB through a functional lens, you could cache every single, or memoize every single return, and you can hash on the signature of the function to store those values. And that's, whether that's in memory or whether that's materialized doesn't really matter. But those are very simple ways to technically take care of it. I think we still have to look at making shorter context windows for what we do in business, which is why we we look at a bank statement for 1 month, not the last 10 years. Those are decisions about information organization that takes us out of there. That's the primary way that I think anyone would have to say, why does DCB have anything to do with performance, when you can either design or cache accordingly. And the beautiful thing about it is that, anything in event sourcing, whether you're doing DCB or whatever, you have an account of exactly what information went in. So if you made a wrong decision because of performance or because of whatever, it doesn't matter. You can switch at any point to something else. You have full accountability of how you used to work. That information is not lost. It's not useless. You start viewing it through a different lens by using a different abstraction, different set of functions, different projections, whatever it is, and pivot, right? I hate to use the word agility because that brings into all that stuff. So I say, event sourcing and event modeling gives you flexibility. You're flexible to change direction at any point in time, and it's really what agilists and all these other people really want anyway. The goal is to be flexible, to not be painted in a corner, to not make decisions that you can't back out of. And there's no better way to do that than to have accountability for everything that happened in the system. And at least with event sourcing and event modeling, there's a standardized way that you can always reliably check that all of these things are always there as events, and they're always in a timeline, they're immutable, and etc. Whereas with a state-based system,
And they represent
have
the
none of
only
those
thing
guarantees.
that will never, ever change.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is what happens, right? At least we haven't invented time travel yet. I don't. As far as I know, we haven't been able to go back in time and change how things happened yet.
Exactly.
But yeah, exactly. Anything else you store is subject to change and subject to interpretation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't have to be afraid of making the wrong decision. I think there's a lot of fear that people have in traditional systems, etc. Why abstractions are so promoted, because you have to be really good at getting the right thing that's going to be reusable the most amount of times. That's only going to be true for that moment, for that person, and it's
in each
going
and
to be
every
false for
project,
everything else.
in each and every project I was involved with, there was this one requirement that came in at one point in time that simply broke everything. Sooner or later, this will come. Very, very
And
soon.
it's actually exactly a requirement like that, where I was building a system for a customer for, I think it was at the time for internet access in public libraries. Of course, nowadays you just get on the Wi-Fi and get on with it. But at that time, it was it was something they thought they could charge for. So it puts it in a time frame, right? And it was beautiful, and I built it using domain-driven design. It was beautiful, and it was,
Nice,
was amazing. And then
A lot of
one
patterns.
feature came in,
Yeah.
right? All those 50 patterns had a
Yeah,
place, not the
perfect.
singleton. It was a
Yeah.
knit-in, but they all had their place. And then this one requirement came in. I'm like, oh no,
Yeah,
this changes everything.
exactly.
And it
Why
was
didn't
it
you
just
mention
takes
this
two
before?
lines of text, right? Oh,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that was really only, and that literally, that requirement led to to Axon in my case, because
Yeah,
I was
I mean-
so fed up with it. That was the drop. Like
Yeah.
that was it. I need to find, we're doing this wrong, people, everyone. We need to find a
But
different
honestly,
way.
that is exactly the reason that brought me also to event sourcing, because I didn't want, I could not work anymore like this. And with event sourcing, this completely goes away. I'm no longer afraid. Throw any requirements at the system, I don't care. It's just another slice. Everything is just another slice.
Yeah.
That's such a relief, really.
Yeah, this is the reason I created my company. I was ready to leave the industry because of just the amount of crap and the unwillingness to improve.
Yeah.
I refused to work that way anymore, and so it was that, or just call it a day and not care anymore. Find a management desk job, enter the Dilbert world, and save enough to retire, and that's it. But
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go without a fight, and so
But you made your way up again, and here we are.
here we are.
All right.
Yeah, and
Looking
like,
at
I mean, I'd like
looking
to
at
just
the
say
clock, I
that
think we're
event
into-
modeling is not something I created. It's something that fell out of a team of really good people building things in the simplest, fastest, most high quality way possible. And what didn't fit was the traditional tooling of tracking tickets, of planning, of having stand-ups in the morning, of everything that you're used to. None of those things added value. All of them took value away. All of those things complicated things. All of those things delayed things. And so event modeling is accumulation of efficiencies that we've experienced. And I never gave it a name. I just thought, oh, we're doing spec-driven development better. We're doing agile better. We're doing this better. And then someone said that you're actually not doing the things that you're doing. You know, it was an event storming summit that you're actually not doing event storming. You're doing something entirely different. All right, so then it has to have a name. So we just basically said we do it this way. And the only thing I did was put all those ideas together into that one article. Said this is what we do, sort of like the Valve handbook or the GitHub handbook style of writing. This is how we operate. This is why we operate this way. And the initial event modeling article was there. So
very important to stress for people that are not familiar with event modeling. It is not born out of, you didn't wake up and think like, hey, what if only we did it this way, right? It was born out of frustration.
Yeah.
And then it's because there's definitely, if you look at the very first event modeling structures, it was different from what it is now. I think right now it's a lot less than it used to be.
Yeah.
It's very simple, and I knew about it for a long time, but I really discovered it a couple of years ago, where I found out when I really found out the difference between event storming and event modeling, and then it immediately clicked as soon as I understood that difference. That really helped, and I'm working on a white paper about AI, software, event modeling, etc., etc. And this is an important aspect for me. It hit the exact right level of detail. Like all the technical details are gone. They're out of the entire discussion, and it is all about how should the system behave. What is it that it needs to do? Not how does it do it. What does it need to do, and how does it react to impulses from users, from other systems, etc.
Exactly.
And I think that is extremely helpful, and I think crucial in the world of AI.
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes on the clock, and there's few things I want to definitely mention before we close. You've already mentioned one. We'll definitely get to a last round, but there's 2 things I want to mention. One of them you mentioned already. Is your workshop.
Yeah.
If you're interested, I mean, people listening to these discussions are probably interested in event modeling one way or another. Maybe they're experts already. Looking at by the comments that we got, some people really know what they're talking about. So, thanks for joining the conversation. But there's a workshop, and I think the first one is on February 26th.
26th and 27th, North American times, and the following month is for European times, and that is on also, luckily, 26th and 27th of March. But it starts 9 a.m. Germany time, right, Martin?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
it is.
Right, so there's something in it for
If
everyone.
something happens, we can change it. But for now, it's that
So
date.
for the person asking the difference between event modeling and event storming, just go to that session and you'll find out exactly what.
Yeah, we don't have time
is.
to get into it, but in essence, event modeling is linear by example, no branching, and very few concepts. Where event
And it
storming
sounds
is
really awkward, and it will feel awkward, but you will be very happy at the end when you get your result that there's no branches.
Yeah, exactly.
Trust me. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we are giving or a colleague of mine is giving a live coding session. If you want to see DCB in action, and also the Axon 5 and with how it works and what code will look like, then. Go to our website on the events. I think in the chat there's a link. Maybe Marina can also post the link of the workshop.
Yeah. Oh, the workshop. Oh, that's just
the workshop
Adaptive Group. Scroll adaptivegroup.com. I can type it in. I don't know. But
I
there's a
hope that,
workshop
shows
section,
up
and you
for-
just click the registration page. There's a drop down for the dates. You can see it's all the way through to December of this year, so you can plan accordingly.
And
But
then everybody can get ready and join us in the big battle of making software suitable for the age of AI.
yeah, exactly.
Just to mention that, I just checked. Ralph Loop finished its work. 5 slices are done, completely finished, including tests. So this was a very productive session for me.
Wow. So I'm doing something wrong still. Yeah. I will. Yeah, I need to get over my trust issue with AI before I allow it to do that. But yes,
You will be left behind. Get over it.
I know. I will jump. Just give me a moment to catch my breath.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm enjoying things because yesterday I was moving my OpenClaw instance, and some of the Git setups, I have a different email for my private Git repositories than my public ones, and you usually have to do this config where you have a different config in a different directory for Git. I just said it in one sentence, and what used to take me, I forgot what that command is. I don't do it often, and of course it would take 5-10 minutes to do it. And I just said, I have this email for these repositories, this email for these. Boom, 3 config files in the right places pointing to each other in an instant, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
I'm
lovely.
enjoying things a lot
Some
more now.
argue that it makes us lazy.
No, I think it makes
I
us
don't know.
think at the level we want to think. I think we slog through the details because we have to, and we've been working like that for a long time. So people that are afraid of AI, yeah, you have a right to be afraid. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm 100% confident that will be relevant. Hey, I don't need Atom. We can do event modeling through an AI thing. Get lost, Atom, right? So that's it's on everyone's mind. But what matters is that you just keep adding value, and just that the goalposts are in a different place for adding value. That's all. That doesn't change.
All right. I think that's a good closing comment. But
Yes.
Martin, anything you want to add?
No. I think we discussed in detail what is important and what is necessary to know. Next step
Yeah.
would be go to the Axonic platform and play with it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Just play around, and whenever you. So that is do it yourself. Like talk to an AI, like Martin talks to his event model. I do think there's some value in having several humans looking at the same wall for event modeling, just to get that exploration going. Let's not underestimate the value of face-to-face, or at least it can be virtual, but that knowledge transfer is very important. But
Yep.
as soon as you have that, use AI to talk to your event models, or let
Yeah.
it talk to you, right?
Yes.
Let's get back into your seat and listen what the event model has to tell you. Let's build some amazing software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Great.
thanks, guys, for a great discussion. I think maybe for the next one we should address the V2, the great collapse of Vibe, the first version of Vibe coded apps that are going to be imploding on us.
I
On
think
all of us.
V2 day 2 problems in relation to event sourcing, or their
Yeah, we
absence,
could-
but
we could do that.
that
So-
is definitely a beautiful topic.
Let us
Absolutely.
know if you want that topic for next time, but I think having this round table, triangular table, if you will, for these concepts is something that people want to see discussed. So
Or anything else, put it in the
Yeah.
comments, and we'll take that into account when we decide on the exact topic.
And
But,
you have your other presentations from the company, right? Allard and Martin, we have our podcast, and you do a whole bunch of webinars as well. So connect to the 3 of us on LinkedIn. We always post those things up there, so you can participate in any way, shape, or form you like. And we also have a Discord server for event modeling with over 1,000 people there now, always helping each other. If you have any questions, you can get answers 24/7 on there. So Martin's on there all the time. I'm on there from time to time too. Try to be on there as much as I can. And Allard, you're in there sometimes. So
sometimes, yeah,
Yeah.
when there's something I get, I want
When
to
you get
dive
time,
into,
when you
but
get a
there's
sliver
a
of
lot
time,
of
you
colleagues
can-
of mine are there as well. Yeah,
But
Absolutely.
there's 0 excuse to not get started, right? 0.
Yeah, Exactly. There's easy access to help, so don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. And all right, well, thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
That was
You
fun.
too. This
Take
was
care.
fun.
See you.
Always good to see you.
Hopefully sooner than we managed to do it the previous
Yeah,
time.
exactly. Well, we'll be in touch. We'll get another date set.
All right.
All right.
Bye bye.